Subscribe for the full story.
My sister paid a woman to claim I was her father to ruin my wedding. I paid the woman double to tell the truth at the altar. The air was thick with the scent of roses and anticipation. My heart pounded a steady rhythm against my ribs, a drumbeat of pure joy. Sarah, my Sarah, was walking down the aisle, her smile a beacon of happiness. I watched her, completely lost in the moment, ready to start our forever. Then, a hush fell over the crowd, a ripple of confusion spreading like wildfire. A woman, a stranger to me, stood near the front, her face a mask of, what, malice. I couldn't quite place it. She opened her mouth, and a single, damning sentence was about to shatter everything. But before that sentence could fully form, before the first hint of scandal could stain Sarah's perfect day, I knew I had to act. Don't miss a single moment of this unbelievable story. Subscribe, like, share, and comment below to let us know what you think. My sister Emily had always been a shadow at the edges of my happiness. Not a playful shadow, but a dark, creeping one, always there to dim the light. We grew up in the same house, shared the same parents, but our worlds were miles apart. Where I found joy in simple things, Emily seemed to thrive on making things difficult. She'd pout if I got a better grade, sulk if I got the last cookie, and generally carry a cloud of displeasure that could rain on anyone's parade. This wedding, though, this was different. This was the culmination of everything I'd ever wanted. Sarah was everything Emily wasn't, kind, genuine, and full of light. The trouble started a week before the wedding. My best man, Mark, a guy who could usually sniff out a bad situation from a mile away, called me, his voice tight with disbelief. "Rob," he'd said, his words tumbling out in a rush, "you're not gonna believe this. I think Emily's trying to ruin the wedding." I'd laughed it off at first. Emily? Ruin my wedding. She'd be miserable, sure, but actively sabotage it? That seemed like a step too far, even for her. But Mark was insistent. He'd overheard a conversation, hushed tones in a cafe. Emily's distinctive, sharp laugh cutting through the background noise. He'd pieced together snippets, enough to make my blood run cold. The words wedding, scene, and something about a man and a father had been clear. He couldn't hear the whole story, but he knew it was bad. My stomach churned. Emily had always been jealous of Sarah. She'd made no secret of it, throwing out barbed comments about Sarah's appearance, her background, anything she could latch onto. But to go this far, it was unthinkable. I tried to confront her, casually at first. "Heard you were out at the Daily Grind the other day, Em. Anything interesting happen?" She'd just given me a tight-lipped smile, the kind that promised nothing good. "Just coffee, Robert. Why? Are you suddenly interested in my social life?" Her eyes, though, held the flicker of something that confirmed Mark's fears. It was a look I knew well, the look of someone hiding something and not liking it one bit. That night, sleep eluded me. I replayed Mark's words, trying to make sense of them. A woman claiming I was her father. At my wedding, it was insane. But Emily was capable of insane. I thought about Sarah, her radiant happiness, and how I couldn't let Emily's twisted games ruin it. I had to know for sure, and if it was true, I had to stop it. The next day I went back to the Daily Grind. I sat at a table near where Mark said he'd heard Emily, nursing a coffee I didn't taste. I watched everyone who came and went. It was a long shot, but I had to try. Then I saw her. She was sitting alone at a table in the corner, nursing a glass of water. There was something about her, a certain theatricality. She was dressed a little too formally for a casual coffee, and her eyes darted around the room as if she was waiting for someone. She looked familiar, in a way I couldn't quite place. She was talking on her phone, her voice low. I caught a few words, just like Mark had. "The wedding. Robert. My father." My heart leaped into my throat. This was her. This was the woman Emily had hired. I walked over to her table, trying to keep my own voice calm. "Excuse me," I said, my voice a little shaky. She looked up, startled, and her eyes widened slightly when she saw me. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice polite but guarded. "My name is Robert," I said, sitting down opposite her, uninvited. "And I believe you're supposed to be meeting my sister Emily here?" Her carefully constructed composure began to crack. She stammered, I don't know what you mean." "Oh, I think you do," I said, my voice hardening. "Mark, my best man, overheard you talking about my wedding, talking about claiming I'm your father." The color drained from her face. She looked around frantically, as if searching for an escape. I was just practicing a part for a play," she lied, her voice unconvincing. "A play?" I leaned forward, my gaze locked on hers. "A play where you accuse your own father of something at his wedding?" The silence stretched between us, thick with her guilt. I knew I had her. "Emily paid you, didn't she?" I asked, my voice a low rumble. She didn't answer, but her shaking hands were all the confirmation I needed. "How much?" I pressed. She whispered, $500. $500. To destroy my life. To break Sarah's heart. A wave of cold fury washed over me. "I'll give you 1,000. I said, the words coming out before I could even think. She blinked, surprised. "What?" $1,000, I repeated, my voice firm. "To walk away. To forget this ever happened. To say nothing at my wedding." She hesitated, her eyes flickering with greed. This was it, the moment of decision. Her livelihood versus my happiness. She looked at me, then down at her hands. I could see the wheels turning, the fear of Emily's wrath, the temptation of more money. "What do I have to do?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Nothing," I said. "Absolutely nothing. Just don't show up at my wedding. Don't say a word. And if you do, if you even think about it, you'll regret it." I slid a $100 bill across the table. "This is a down payment. The rest, when I know you're out of town, far, far away from my wedding." She snatched the bill, her eyes still wide. "You won't see me again," she promised, and I believed her. I left the cafe, the scent of roses replaced by the lingering acrid smell of betrayal, but also a flicker of hope. I had bought myself time. The wedding day dawned bright and clear, a stark contrast to the stormy undercurrents that had been churning beneath the surface of my life. Every breath I took was laced with a nervous exhilaration, a potent cocktail of anticipation and lingering dread. Sarah was radiant, a vision in ivory, her joy infectious. As I stood at the altar, the weight of the ring in my pocket felt like a promise, a tangible symbol of the future we were about to build. The organ music swelled, a majestic crescendo, and then the rustle of silk, the hushed murmurs of the guests. Sarah was here. My eyes met hers, and the world narrowed to a single, perfect moment. Her smile, so full of love and trust, was the only thing that mattered. The officiant began to speak, his voice a calm anchor in the sea of emotions swirling within me. But then, just as I thought the last vestiges of my anxiety were about to dissipate, a shift in the air, a subtle disturbance, like a pebble dropped into a still pond. It was her, the woman from the cafe. She was there, near the front, not quite in the pews, but hovering at the edge of the aisle, a strange, almost theatrical presence. My blood ran cold. Had she not taken the money? Had Emily found some other way to manipulate this? My gaze darted to Emily, who was seated with our parents, her face an unreadable mask. But there was a subtle tension in her shoulders, a flicker of something in her eyes that confirmed my worst fears. The woman opened her mouth. My heart leaped into my throat, a frantic bird trapped in my chest. This was it. The moment of truth, or rather, the moment of lies. Sarah turned her head, a slight frown creasing her brow, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. Then, a voice, clear and strong, cut through the tense silence. It wasn't mine. It was Mark, my best man, standing beside me, his face etched with determination. "Hold on a moment," he boomed, his voice echoing through the hushed sanctuary. Every head turned towards him. He took a step forward, his eyes fixed on the woman. "I think there's been a misunderstanding." The woman faltered, her planned pronouncement dying on her lips. She looked at Mark, then at me, her eyes wide with panic. Emily's face, for the first time all day, registered a shock that bordered on horror. "This woman," Mark continued, his voice unwavering, "was approached by a member of my friend's family to create a scene today, to make a false accusation." He paused, letting his words sink in. The murmuring in the crowd intensified, and I can tell you with absolute certainty that any such accusation would be a fabrication, designed to inflict pain and cause chaos on what should be a joyous occasion. My breath hitched. Mark was going further than I'd anticipated. He was directly confronting Emily, indirectly, but unequivocally. The woman, seeing her carefully constructed plan crumble, made a move to flee, but Mark, with surprising agility, stepped in her path. "I believe," Mark said, his voice now softer, almost conversational, but with an underlying steel, "you were offered a sum of money to impersonate someone, to lie. And I believe that offer has been rescinded, and a much better offer has been made to tell the truth, or rather, to remain silent, which, in your case, is the truth." The woman looked at him, then at me. The fight had gone out of her. She'd been caught, outmaneuvered. She mumbled something inaudible, her gaze fixed on the floor. "I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch that," Mark said, leaning in slightly. "Perhaps a little louder for everyone to hear?" The woman, her voice trembling, finally spoke, her words clear enough to be heard by those nearest to her. He's not my father," she whispered, her gaze still averted. The silence that followed was profound. It was a silence pregnant with unspoken understanding, with the weight of revelation. Sarah's eyes, wide with confusion, found mine. I gave her a reassuring smile, a silent promise that everything would be explained. Emily, however, was a different story. Her face was a mask of fury, her knuckles white as she gripped the pew in front of her. She stood up, her voice sharp, cutting through the lingering quiet. "Robert, what is the meaning of this? Who is this woman? Mark, how dare you slander your friend's family?" I finally turned to face her. The joy of the moment had been tainted, but it hadn't been destroyed. Not this time. "Emily," I said, my voice steady, carrying the weight of 1,000 unspoken grievances. "I know what you did. I know you paid this woman to lie, to ruin my wedding, to hurt Sarah." Her denial was swift but hollow. "That's a ridiculous accusation, Robert. You've let your best man get to your head. This woman is a stranger, and Mark has no right to speak for you." "He has every right," I countered, my voice rising slightly, "because I asked him to, because I knew you were capable of this. And I decided, Emily, that enough was enough." I then addressed the woman directly, my voice calm but firm. "This woman," I announced to the assembled guests, my voice amplified by the sudden stillness, "was hired by my sister to falsely claim that I was her father, to create a scandal on my wedding day." A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Sarah's hand found mine, her grip tightening. She looked at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of shock and a dawning understanding. "She was paid to lie," I continued, my gaze locked on Emily. "But I paid her double to tell the truth." And she did. She told the truth. I am not her father. The woman, emboldened by my words and the clear evidence of Emily's machinations, seemed to find her voice again, albeit a little shaky. "He's telling the truth," she confirmed, her voice gaining a little strength. "Emily, she hired me. She told me what to say." Emily stood frozen for a moment, her carefully constructed facade finally cracking. Then, with a strangled cry, she turned and fled down the aisle, her departure creating a fresh wave of murmurs. Our parents looked stunned, their faces a mixture of embarrassment and confusion. The officiant, bless his stoic soul, cleared his throat. "Well," he said, a small smile playing on his lips, "it appears we have navigated a minor detour. Shall we continue?" The atmosphere in the church shifted. The initial shock gave way to a palpable sense of relief, even amusement for some. The scandal, instead of destroying the day, had become a bizarre footnote, a testament to the lengths one would go to for love, and the even greater lengths one would go to for spite. Sarah squeezed my hand. "Are you okay?" she whispered. I turned to her, my heart swelling with an overwhelming sense of love and gratitude. "More than okay," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I'm married to you. Nothing else matters." The rest of the ceremony proceeded, the air now lighter, the joy more profound for having weathered the storm. As we exchanged our vows, my gaze never left Sarah's. Every word I spoke was a promise, a commitment to a future built on honesty and love, a future that Emily, in her twisted way, had tried to sabotage. After the ceremony, as guests milled about, congratulating us, I saw Emily's parents approach. Our mother, her face pale, looked heartbroken. Our father, his expression grim, stood beside her. "Robert," our father began, his voice heavy. I don't know what to say." "There's nothing to say, Dad," I replied, trying to keep my voice even. "Emily has her issues. I hope she gets the help she needs." Our mother, tears welling in her eyes, reached out and tentatively touched my arm. "I'm so sorry, Robert. We never imagined. We had no idea she was capable of this." "I know," I said, offering a small, strained smile. "But Sarah and I are strong. We'll get through this." Mark, ever the pragmatist, pulled me aside. "So," he said, a wry grin on his face, "what about that double payment? Did you actually hand over the cash?" I chuckled, the tension finally beginning to ease. "Let's just say I made sure she had enough to get out of town and then some." Emily's going to have a very hard time explaining this one. The reception was a blur of laughter, dancing, and heartfelt toasts. Sarah and I reveled in the pure, unadulterated joy of the day, the earlier drama fading into the background. We danced our first dance, lost in our own world, the whispers of the past silenced by the overwhelming presence of our love for each other. Later that night, as we were preparing to leave for our honeymoon, I received a text message. It was from Emily. It simply read, "You think this is over? You have no idea." I sighed, a familiar weariness creeping back in. It wasn't over. It would likely never be truly over with Emily. But as I looked at Sarah, her eyes sparkling, her hand in mine, I knew that whatever battles lay ahead, we would face them together. The woman at the altar, the one Emily paid to ruin my wedding, had been paid twice, once by Emily for lies, and once by me for the truth. And in that moment, standing beside the woman I loved, I knew I had made the right choice. The price of truth, however steep, was always worth it. My wedding day had been marred by my sister's venom, but it had also been a testament to the resilience of love and the power of standing up for what is right, even when the odds seemed stacked against you. We had started our forever, not in quiet perfection, but in a blaze of hard-won truth, a truth that, in its own way, made our union even stronger. The text message from Emily was a cold, sharp shard of glass against the warm tapestry of our wedding day. It was a stark reminder that while our union was sealed, the tempest that had threatened to capsize it hadn't entirely abated. As Sarah and I packed for our honeymoon, the celebratory champagne still buzzing in our veins, her words cast a faint shadow, a whisper of future conflict in the otherwise serene aftermath. Our honeymoon in Tuscany was meant to be a sanctuary, a sun-drenched escape from the machinations of my family. For the first few days, it was precisely that. We wandered through ancient vineyards, savored gelato under the Tuscan sun, and rediscovered the quiet intimacy that had drawn us together in the first place. Sarah bloomed in the idyllic setting, her laughter echoing through sun-dappled piazzas, her worries momentarily forgotten. But Emily's text, "You think this is over? You have no idea," gnawed at the edges of my peace. It was the serpent in our Eden, a subtle but persistent reminder of her insidious nature. I found myself scanning my phone for updates, for any sign of her next move, a habit that Sarah, with her characteristic intuition, soon noticed. "You're still thinking about her, aren't you?" she asked one evening, as we watched the sunset paint the Tuscan hills in hues of amber and rose. Her voice was gentle, devoid of accusation, but the question hung in the air between us. I sighed, reaching for her hand. "It's just... I know Emily. She doesn't let things go." Sarah squeezed my hand, her gaze steady. "And we're not letting her win. Remember what Mark said? You paid that woman double to tell the truth. That's power, Robert. The power of truth. And that's what we have on our side." Her words were a balm, a gentle reminder of our victory. But the nature of Emily's vendettas was often unpredictable, a hydra-headed beast that grew new heads when one was severed. The first inkling of Emily's new offensive arrived not as a direct confrontation, but as a slow, insidious drip of misinformation. Friends and distant relatives began calling, their voices laced with a peculiar blend of concern and curiosity. They spoke of rumors circulating, whispers about my family's shady dealings, and the unsettling implications of the woman at the wedding. It turned out Emily had been busy. She'd orchestrated a campaign of carefully curated gossip, painting a picture of a troubled family, of financial impropriety, and of a hastily arranged marriage to cover up a scandal. She'd used the woman from the cafe not to make a false accusation at the wedding, but to seed a narrative of instability and moral ambiguity surrounding my life. The woman, clearly still in Emily's pocket, was now a paid witness to a fabricated narrative of my supposed irresponsibility. Sarah, ever the pragmatist, helped me navigate this new onslaught. We started a private investigation, a quiet effort to counter Emily's lies with hard facts. We unearthed proof of my family's solid financial standing, discreetly contacted the lawyer who had handled the woman's initial agreement with Emily, and even managed to obtain a signed affidavit from the woman detailing Emily's coercion and payment for both the planned wedding disruption and the subsequent slander. The legal team Mark had recommended was invaluable. They began the process of sending cease and desist letters, but the damage was already being done. The more Emily's lies spread, the more they seemed to mutate, becoming more elaborate, more damaging. One afternoon, Sarah and I were at a small cafe in Florence, enjoying a quiet lunch. Suddenly, a renowned investigative journalist, someone I'd never met, approached our table, his face a mixture of professional curiosity and blatant suspicion. "Mr. Thorne," he began, his voice amplified by the sudden hush in the cafe, "I've been trying to reach you. There are some rather concerning allegations circulating about your family business, specifically regarding the circumstances surrounding your recent wedding. Could you shed some light on the rumors of illicit activities?" I felt a cold dread creep into my stomach. Emily had clearly escalated her efforts, and the media, always hungry for a sensational story, had taken the bait. "Sir," I began, my voice controlled, though my hands were clenched under the table, "I believe you've been fed a pack of lies. My wedding was a joyous occasion, and any rumors to the contrary are fabrications designed to cause harm." The journalist, however, was not easily dissuaded. He produced a small recorder, his eyes glinting. "And the woman who was at the ceremony? The one who was apparently hired to disrupt the proceedings? What was her connection to you?" Sarah's hand found mine again, a silent gesture of support. "That woman," she said, her voice clear and strong, "was paid by Robert's sister to create a scene, and Robert, being the man of integrity that he is, ensured the truth came out." The journalist's eyebrows shot up. He glanced between Sarah and me, a flicker of interest replacing his skepticism. It was a small victory, but a victory nonetheless. We were beginning to fight back. The legal battle, though discreetly handled, began to take its toll. Emily was relentless, using every loophole, every delay tactic available. Her objective seemed less about the money and more about the sheer destructive pleasure of causing me pain. The situation forced me to be more open with Sarah, to share the full, ugly history of Emily's resentments. She had always felt overlooked, overshadowed by my achievements, and my marriage, to her, was the ultimate betrayal. She saw Sarah not as a partner, but as a prize that had been stolen from her, a prize that had never truly been hers to begin with. "It's like she's addicted to drama," Sarah mused one night, as we pored over legal documents in our temporary Tuscan villa. "The more chaos she creates, the more she feels in control. It's a twisted form of validation." I nodded, the weight of it all pressing down on me. "She's always been like this. Ever since we were kids. If I got something she wanted, she'd find a way to either ruin it for me or make sure I didn't enjoy it." The legal proceedings were a slow, arduous process. We managed to get some of the more egregious defamatory statements retracted, and the woman who had been paid by Emily was eventually compelled to sign an affidavit confirming Emily's involvement. This, coupled with the documentation of the payments, provided substantial evidence of Emily's malicious intent. However, Emily was a master of deflection. She would admit to protecting the family name or acting out of genuine concern for my well-being, painting herself as the wronged party, the one trying to expose my perceived flaws. She even managed to turn some of our own parents against me, feeding them tales of my supposed recklessness and Sarah's manipulative influence. Our parents, still reeling from the events of the wedding, were caught in a painful crossfire. My mother, deeply distressed, tried to mediate, but her attempts were often twisted by Emily into further evidence of my supposed defiance. My father, a man of quiet integrity, found himself increasingly isolated from Emily's manufactured drama. But the familial schism was a constant source of sorrow. The legal costs began to mount, draining our savings and casting a long shadow over our honeymoon. The idyllic escape was proving to be a temporary reprieve, not a permanent solution. One evening, as we were packing to return home, I received another text from Emily. This one was different. It wasn't a threat. It was a confession, albeit a twisted one. "He called me," it read. "He knows, and he's furious. You've made a terrible mistake, Robert. You've put us all at risk." My blood ran cold. Who was he? Who had Emily been in contact with besides the woman from the cafe? The ambiguity of her message was more terrifying than any direct threat. Back home, the reality of Emily's machinations hit us with full force. The illicit activities mentioned by the journalist were not random accusations. They were tied to a legitimate, albeit complex, business deal my father had been involved in years ago. A deal that had been perfectly legal and above board at the time, but which Emily, with her talent for twisting narratives, had managed to warp into something sinister. She had contacted a rival company, subtly leaking information about the past deal, implying that my father's company had engaged in unethical practices. Her goal was to destabilize our family's reputation, to create a crisis that would force me to abandon Sarah and deal with the fallout. The revelation sent shockwaves through our family. My father was blindsided, his pride wounded, his carefully constructed business empire threatened by his own daughter's malice. He confronted Emily, and this time the confrontation was raw and unforgiving. The years of unspoken resentments of Emily's destructive behavior finally erupted. The ensuing argument was explosive. My father, for the first time in my memory, truly lost his temper with Emily. He spoke of disappointment, of betrayal, of a deep, abiding shame that she had become such a person. Emily, cornered and furious, lashed out, not with remorse but with further accusations, painting herself as the victim of a patriarchal family that had always favored me. The climax of this familial drama unfolded in my parents' home. Sarah and I were there, caught in the middle, trying to de-escalate the situation. During the heated exchange, Emily, in a fit of rage, revealed something that stopped everyone in their tracks. "You always favored him," she screamed at our father, her voice cracking. "He always got everything, even your precious company. You think you built this? You didn't even know about the real deal. Robert was the one who made sure everything was clean, who actually handled the legitimate side of things while you were playing pretend CEO." Her words hung in the air, a shocking revelation. My father looked at me, his face a mask of confusion and dawning realization. My father had always been the publicly acknowledged architect of the family business, but the truth was, during a particularly tumultuous period years ago, when he'd been facing significant personal challenges, I, with the guidance of my now-deceased mentor, had quietly and discreetly handled the intricate legal and financial restructuring that had secured the company's future. I had done it to protect him, to protect our family's legacy, and to ensure my father's public image remained intact. Emily, in her desperate attempt to hurt me, had inadvertently revealed my true role in safeguarding the family's financial stability. She had exposed the fact that true Revin Bermude was the one who truly understood and managed the core of the business, not her idealized vision of my father's sole genius. The revelation didn't immediately mend fences, but it shifted the power dynamic dramatically. My father looked at me with a newfound respect, a quiet understanding passing between us. Emily, realizing she had overplayed her hand, that her attempt to discredit me had backfired spectacularly, fell silent. The fight seemed to drain out of her, replaced by a hollow despair. The legal battles with Emily continued, but with the affidavit from the woman and the clear evidence of her ongoing defamation campaign, our legal team was able to secure a significant injunction against her. She was forbidden from making further public statements about me or my family, and the threat of severe financial penalties loomed large. The repercussions of Emily's actions were far-reaching. Some business associates distanced themselves, wary of the lingering stain on our family's reputation. But for every detractor, there were those who admired our resilience and the truth that had ultimately prevailed. Sarah stood by me, a steadfast pillar of strength and support. Her belief in me never wavered, even when the accusations were at their most vicious. The aftermath of the wedding and the subsequent legal and familial drama was a period of intense scrutiny and rebuilding. It forced me to confront the complexities of my family dynamics, the unhealthy patterns of behavior that had festered for years. It also solidified my bond with Sarah. We had faced a formidable challenge together, and our partnership had emerged stronger, more resilient than ever. Mark, true to his word, had been instrumental in navigating the legal labyrinth. He had also been a constant source of moral support, his unwavering loyalty, a comforting presence amidst the chaos. He even managed to secure a significant settlement from Emily's legal team, ensuring that the costs incurred were covered, and more. So, Mark said, a mischievous glint in his eye, as we discussed the final legal settlements, "That woman from the cafe, you paid her double, right? Did you get your money's worth?" I chuckled, a genuine, unforced sound. "More than my money's worth, Mark." She told the truth, and in the end, that's what mattered. Emily paid her for lies, and I paid her for the truth. It was a transaction that ended up exposing the real villain. The experience, though harrowing, had a profound effect on me. It stripped away the illusion of control and forced me to confront the reality of how deeply familial toxicity could affect every aspect of one's life. It taught me the importance of confronting difficult truths, no matter how painful, and the invaluable strength that comes from having a partner who stands by you, unshakably. As the dust settled, and the initial storm of legal battles and family turmoil subsided, Sarah and I began to truly build our life together. The foundations had been tested, strained to their breaking point, but they had held firm. The wedding, intended to be a joyous celebration, had become a crucible, forging our bond in the fires of adversity. Emily's impact, though significant, was ultimately contained. She had attempted to shatter our happiness, to dismantle my life with calculated malice, but her efforts had, ironically, only served to strengthen my resolve and solidify my commitment to Sarah. Her attempts to create chaos had ultimately led to clarity, to the exposure of hidden truths, and to a deeper understanding of the resilience of love. Our life together was not a fairy tale devoid of challenges. Emily remained a presence, a dissonant note in the harmony of our family, but her power over me had been irrevocably broken. We learned to manage her presence, to set boundaries, and to shield our happiness from her venomous reach. The wedding day, with its dramatic unveiling of my sister's machinations, had been a harsh introduction to the complexities of our intertwined lives. But it had also been a powerful testament to our enduring love. We had started our marriage not in quiet perfection, but in a blaze of hard-won truth. A truth that, in its own unique way, had made our union even stronger. The whispers of past scandals and present anxieties faded into the background, replaced by the steady rhythm of our shared life, a life built on a foundation of honesty, resilience, and an unshakable love that had weathered the storm and emerged, not unscathed, but triumphant. The wedding, intended to be a beginning, had truly become one, a new chapter written in the ink of courage and unwavering devotion. The quiet hum of our newly settled life back home was a stark contrast to the Italian sunshine and the whirlwind of legal wrangling. Tuscany had been a sanctuary, a much-needed respite, but returning meant facing the residual fallout of Emily's relentless campaign. The initial legal injunction against her was a significant victory, a tangible barrier against her most destructive impulses. Yet, the echoes of her lies lingered, a faint but persistent static in the otherwise clear signal of our marital bliss. Our parents, particularly my father, had begun to heal from the shock of Emily's revelations and her subsequent familial sabotage. The quiet respect that had passed between him and me was a fragile sprout, needing careful nurturing. He'd confided in me about his own insecurities during the period when I'd taken over the company's crucial restructuring, admitting that he'd felt less like the captain of his ship and more like a figurehead. He'd leaned on my mentor's wisdom, he'd said, and I too had been a quiet but crucial anchor. This mutual acknowledgement had, in a strange way, brought us closer. My mother, however, remained a more delicate flower, still susceptible to Emily's manipulation. Emily, despite the injunction, had a knack for finding subtler avenues for her discord. She'd started a series of veiled social media posts, carefully worded to imply hardship and neglect, hinting at a family that had cast her out. These were directed at a select group of our parents, old friends, those who were more susceptible to gossip and less inclined to investigate the truth. Sarah, ever the pragmatist and my unwavering ally, had developed a keen eye for Emily's indirect attacks. "It's like she's playing a long game of chess, Robert," she'd observed one evening, scrolling through Emily's latest carefully crafted lament. "She can't attack us directly, so she's trying to isolate our support system, chip away at our reputation by proxy." To counter this, we adopted a strategy of proactive transparency within our immediate circle. We made it a point to openly discuss our lives, our triumphs, and our challenges within the trusted confines of our friendships. When questions arose, often subtly planted by Emily's indirect insinuations, we answered them with forthrightness, sharing the documented truths about the legal battles and Emily's calculated actions. It wasn't about airing dirty laundry, but about preempting misinformation by establishing a clear narrative. The settlement from Emily's legal team, orchestrated by Mark, had been substantial. It covered all our legal expenses and provided a financial buffer that eased the strain on our savings. However, the psychological toll of the ordeal was harder to quantify. The constant vigilance, the need to dissect every communication, had left me feeling depleted. Sarah, too, had absorbed some of that stress, her natural optimism occasionally clouded by a weariness that I knew stemmed from my own vulnerability. One crisp autumn afternoon, as we were settling into our new routine, a rather peculiar envelope arrived. It was a formal, embossed card, inviting us to a charity gala hosted by a prominent philanthropic organization. The guest list included many influential figures, potential clients, and business partners. Sarah immediately recognized the organization's president, a woman named Eleanor Vance, as someone she'd met during a brief stint in the nonprofit sector. "Eleanor is a force of nature," Sarah commented. "Very sharp, very connected. This could be a good opportunity to network, Robert, especially now with the company needing to solidify its reputation." I agreed. While the specter of Emily still loomed, the injunction provided a necessary shield. We decided to attend, not only for the potential business benefits but also as a symbolic gesture of our resilience, our refusal to be cowed by past machinations. We wanted to project an image of strength and stability. The gala was held in a grand ballroom, filled with the murmur of polite conversation, the clinking of glasses, and the soft strains of a live orchestra. We mingled, reconnected with old acquaintances, and were introduced to new ones. Sarah, as always, navigated the social currents with grace and poise, her innate warmth drawing people in. I, feeling a renewed sense of confidence, found myself engaging in conversations about our company's future, the positive trajectory we were on, subtly weaving in narratives of integrity and hard work. As the evening progressed, I noticed a familiar face across the room. It was the investigative journalist who had approached us in Florence. He was speaking with a group of influential business leaders, his expression earnest, as if imparting a crucial piece of information. A prickle of unease went through me. Had Emily found another way to inject her poison? Later, as Sarah and I were enjoying a quiet moment by the bar, Eleanor Vance approached us, her brow furrowed. "Robert, Sarah," she began, her voice a low, concerned tone. "I overheard a conversation that deeply disturbed me. That journalist, Mr. Henderson, was speaking with a few of our sponsors about some rather unsavory allegations surrounding your family's business practices." My stomach tightened. Allegations? What kind of allegations? He mentioned offshore accounts and manipulated contracts from years ago. Eleanor explained, her gaze steady. He seemed to have obtained some new information. He specifically referenced a past deal your father was involved in, the one from your wedding days rumors. This was a new tactic, a more sophisticated attack. Emily hadn't directly contacted the journalist again, but she had clearly unearthed or fabricated something more substantial than the vague whispers she'd been circulating. She was targeting the very foundations of my father's legacy, using meticulously crafted lies to sow seeds of doubt in the minds of those who mattered most. Sarah immediately stepped in. "Eleanor, those allegations are completely unfounded. They stem from a vindictive campaign waged by Robert's sister Emily. We have legal documentation, affidavits from individuals involved, that prove her actions were purely malicious and designed to defame our family." Eleanor listened intently, her eyes assessing us both. "I appreciate your honesty, Sarah. It's just, Henderson is a formidable journalist. If he's pursuing this, it will gain traction. And the sponsors I spoke with are very sensitive to anything that hints at impropriety, regardless of the source." The evening, which had started with such promise, now felt tinged with a renewed sense of threat. We thanked Eleanor for her concern and decided to leave, our minds already racing with the implications of this new development. Back home, we pored over our legal files, searching for any angle Emily might be exploiting. The past business deal, the one I had discreetly restructured years ago, had been meticulously legal, a complex financial maneuver designed to solidify the company's position during a challenging economic climate. It had been transparent to all relevant parties at the time, and our subsequent audits had confirmed its legality. "She's gone back to that deal," I said, my voice tight with frustration. "She's twisting the complexity of it, making it sound like something it wasn't. She's found a way to weaponize the truth by distorting it." "But how?" Sarah wondered aloud. "The information about that deal is deeply buried. Only a select few people had access to the original documents, and those were handled by our legal team and the external auditors." We decided to contact Mark immediately. He listened patiently as we recounted the encounter with Eleanor Vance and the journalist. "Henderson is a good reporter, but he relies on sources," Mark said, his tone thoughtful. "If Emily has new information, it means she's found a new accomplice, or she's managed to access something she shouldn't have." He assured us he would discreetly investigate the journalist's recent sources and any possible connections to Emily. In the meantime, he advised us to prepare a comprehensive statement, backed by all the legal documentation we had, ready to be released if the accusations gained any significant traction. The next few weeks were a tense waiting game. The charity gala had served its purpose as a networking event, but it had also inadvertently reopened a Pandora's box of Emily's machinations. We received no direct contact from Emily, but the subtle social media posts continued, painting a picture of a sister unfairly ostracized and misunderstood. Then, a breakthrough came. Not from Mark's investigation, but from an unexpected source. One of my father's former business associates, a man named David Chen, a respected figure in the industry, contacted me. David had been at the gala and had overheard the conversation between Henderson and his sponsors. He was also a close friend of Eleanor Vance and knew the integrity of our family's business. "Robert," David said, his voice grave when we spoke on the phone, "I felt compelled to reach out. What Henderson was implying, it's preposterous. I was involved in that deal with your father back then. It was a brilliant piece of financial engineering, perfectly legal and crucial to the company's survival. I still have my original copies of the documentation, signed by everyone, including your father and the auditors." He went on to explain that Emily had recently contacted him under the guise of seeking business advice and had subtly steered the conversation towards that old deal. She had hinted that there were unsettling implications and that a thorough investigation might be warranted. David, however, had recognized the underlying malice in her tone and had been wary from the start. He had dismissed her insinuations then, but Henderson's recent pursuit of the topic had made him realize Emily might be trying to exploit his past involvement. "She was fishing for something, Robert," David confirmed. "She wanted me to corroborate some fabricated narrative. I refused to engage, but I imagine she's found someone else who's less scrupulous." David's testimony was invaluable. It provided a direct counter-narrative from someone who had been intimately involved in the deal and who had witnessed Emily's attempts to manipulate him. We immediately secured an affidavit from David, detailing his conversation with Emily and reaffirming the legitimacy of the business transaction. Armed with David's statement, we released our comprehensive press statement. It meticulously detailed the history of the business deal, provided corroborating evidence from auditors and legal documents, and explicitly stated that the current allegations were a continuation of a malicious defamation campaign by Emily Thorne, supported by documented evidence of her past actions. We included David's affidavit as a crucial piece of supporting material. The effect was immediate. The journalist, Henderson, likely realizing the weakness of his source and the strength of our counter-evidence, publicly withdrew his inquiries, citing unsubstantiated allegations. The sponsors Eleanor Vance had spoken with expressed their support and understanding. The brief storm had passed, leaving behind the quiet satisfaction of a battle won. This renewed skirmish with Emily, though shorter and less devastating than the wedding incident, reinforced a crucial lesson. Her tactics would evolve, becoming more sophisticated and insidious. She wasn't driven by logic or reason, but by a deep-seated need for validation through destruction. The family situation, though outwardly calmer, remained a delicate ecosystem. Emily, having been thwarted again, retreated into a sulky silence. She occasionally sent cryptic, passive-aggressive messages to our parents, painting herself as the victim of a conspiracy. My father, while still maintaining contact, was more guarded in his interactions with her, his disappointment palpable. Sarah and I, meanwhile, were building our life with a growing sense of purpose. The challenges had forged a bond between us that was stronger than any abstract ideal of love. We understood each other's strengths and weaknesses, our fears and our aspirations. Our home, once a symbol of our new beginning, now felt like a fortress, fortified by shared experiences and an unwavering commitment to each other. Mark, true to his word, had not only secured the financial settlement but also provided ongoing legal counsel and strategic advice. He'd become a trusted friend, a vital part of our support network. "You know," he'd said during one of our debriefs, a wry smile on his face, "I've dealt with a lot of messy family disputes in my career. Yours, however, has a certain theatrical flair. Emily is quite the antagonist." His light-hearted observation, while accurate, underscored the profound impact Emily's behavior had had on our lives. It wasn't just about financial or reputational damage. It was about the emotional toll, the constant vigilance, the gnawing uncertainty. As the first anniversary of our wedding approached, we decided to celebrate our survival and our enduring love in a way that felt authentic to us. Instead of a grand public affair, we planned a quiet renewal of our vows, a private ceremony with only our closest friends and family present. This included Mark and, tentatively, my parents. We extended an invitation to Emily, not out of obligation, but as a final, sincere attempt to offer an olive branch, a chance for her to witness our genuine happiness and perhaps, finally, begin to heal. The renewal was held on a secluded beach, the waves providing a soothing soundtrack. Sarah, radiant in a simple white dress, looked at me with eyes that held a depth of love and understanding that words couldn't capture. As we exchanged our vows, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. We had navigated a tempest, and the calm that followed was all the more precious for the storms we had weathered. Emily did not attend. Her response, delivered via a curt text message, was a familiar lament about being excluded and misunderstood. While it stung, it no longer held the power to derail our peace. We had learned to compartmentalize her presence, to acknowledge her existence without allowing it to dictate our happiness. The aftermath of Emily's sustained attacks had been a brutal but ultimately illuminating experience. It had stripped away any lingering illusions about the simplicity of family or the ease of building a life together. It had forced me to confront the darker corners of human nature, the destructive potential that can lie dormant even within one's own blood. But it had also revealed the extraordinary strength of love, the resilience of the human spirit, and the invaluable power of partnership. Sarah had been my rock, my confidant, my unwavering source of strength. Our shared ordeal had solidified our commitment, forging a bond that was not only romantic, but profoundly supportive and deeply respectful. The lessons learned from Emily's vendetta were etched deeply into my psyche. I understood now that true power wasn't in control or manipulation, but in integrity, in truth, and in the unwavering support of those who truly matter. Emily had sought to break us, to diminish our light. But, in her relentless pursuit of darkness, she had inadvertently illuminated the strength of our bond and the enduring power of our love. The wedding, in retrospect, had been less of a beginning and more of a crucible, a fiery test that had refined us, strengthened us, and ultimately propelled us into a future built on a foundation of hard-won truth and an unshakable devotion to each other. The whispers of past anxieties faded into the background, replaced by the steady, reassuring rhythm of our shared life, a life built not on illusion, but on the bedrock of resilience and an unyielding love that had faced the storm and emerged, not unscathed, but triumphant.
Subscribe for the full story.